who she is. The station master came up and he said, Trudy. See, that was a name that I was called when I was little in my country. Because in my country, I was a big mistake. My mom gave birth to a biracial little girl. And in South Korea, to be a single parent, you were ostracized. But if you had a biracial child, you had no future. And little girls and little boys like me were called Sugi. And if you translate it, it means half-breed. But in reality, it basically means child of death and nothingness. That was my identity. Sugi, you cannot be here. I'm waiting for my uncle. No one is coming for you. You must leave. I remember leaving the train station. It was starting to get dark, and I found an oxen cart, and I crawled underneath it. My mama had handed me a little cloth parcel, and I opened it up, and in it was a little rice ball pickle and a hard-boiled egg, and I ate that. And I remember taking that little piece of cloth and putting it up to my face, just like my children and my 19 grandchildren have done when they were little. I just wanted to smell my mama. I wanted to feel something that was tangible, and I cried out into the night, Mama, Mama, you promised. The next morning, I ran back to the station because surely my uncle had just forgotten, right? But at the end of the second day, no uncle and no mama. The second night, under that oxen cart, I was cold, and I was lonely, and I was hungry. And I took that cloth, and I wrapped it over my head, and I cried into it, Mama, Mama, you promised. Where are you, Mama? The next morning, I knew not to go back to the station. So I stood on the railroad, and I knew the train had come one way. So if I just follow the tracks back, surely I would find my mama. That was the beginning of a 2.5-year journey that I would never want anyone in this room to ever experience. I know what bullying feels like. I know what ridicule feels like. I know what taunting feels like. I know what hunger feels like, because I remember being so hungry that actually I could feel my own body eating itself. I know what it is to crawl into a little hole at night, scared to death to close my eyes, but also scared to death that I would never wake up. I know what it is to be tied to a tree and beaten. I know what it is for children to throw rocks at you and call you names. I know what it is to be used violently in a way that no little girl should ever be used. And when I was 7 years old, someone found me dying. Just a piece of garbage. So they took me to the edge of the city where there was a landfill. And they actually threw me there to die. If I had died at that moment, I wouldn't have made a difference to anybody on the face of the earth. But see, we celebrate Christmas. Christmas means heaven came down. Christmas means that God knew us even before we were put into our mother's womb. God knows our spirit, and He knows those that are searching hard after Him, and He says He will find a way of rescue for them. But as we know, Christmas is all about gifts, and it's only not Him giving gifts, but in turn, us turning our hearts outward and saying, what can we do to give back to Him? My life changed on that garbage pile. The world says you are nothing but dust and garbage. But a Swedish nurse came walking by one day, and she had come to South Korea to rescue babies. And she saw me as a 7-year-old lying on that garbage pile. And and leave me there. And she said 2 things happened that changed her mind. One was, as she got up, her legs felt so heavy they would not move. And as she's trying to figure out why her legs are not moving, this quiet Swedish Lutheran nurse heard an audible voice. And the voice said this: "She is mine. She is mine." Christmas means heaven came down, and the voice of God says to every one of us in this room, "He is mine, she is mine." But He looks at every little child that has been abandoned, every little child that has no food, every little child that has no clothing, every little child from the time it was conceived in its mother's womb, the breath of God and the voice of God cried out, "That child is mine." I was rescued, and I was given the beginning of the rest of my life. I was placed in an orphanage, and in the orphanage, I got 3 meals a day. I got clothes on my back. They began to teach me and to educate me and to introduce me to Jesus. But see, with hundreds of children, the emotional needs of a child cannot be met. And I was in that orphanage for about 2 years. And then one day, an American couple came to the orphanage. Here I was, 9 years old. By now, I had lice so bad in my hair that it was more white than dark. I had worms so bad in my stomach that sometimes when they got hungry, they would crawl out of my throat. I had an eye that was lazy, that wandered all over my eye socket, and I still had the scars from living out on the street. This couple had come to South Korea. They had no children of their own, and they wanted to adopt a little baby, healthy boy, and they were going to call him Stephen. Without me knowing, they had gone to 6 different orphanages, but somehow their heart said, "No, not yet." Mine was the 7th orphanage. I'm 9 years old. I'm biracial. I'm beyond the age where any couple wants a child. Besides, I had too much emotional scarring. But I'll never forget that day. The bell of the orphanage rang, and the worker went and opened up the little gate, and he shut it, and he opened up the big gate. Now remember, in the orphanage, they sent me to church, and I heard lots of Christian stories, and I love Bible stories, and like all of you, one of my favorite stories was the story of David and Goliath. But that day, when that foreign man came walking in through the gate, I thought for sure Mr. Goliath himself had come back to life. I never saw such a tall, round man in my whole life. I mean, in South Korea, only one that was a little round was rich. And this man was like this, so he must have been a billionaire, you know? And then when he stepped aside, guess what? There was a Mrs. Billionaire. I watched this giant of a man, and I thought for sure he was Goliath. I saw him go up to a little crib or a basket where a baby was, and I saw him pick it up and tuck it under his neck. Now, from the time that I remember my mama when I was 4 and a half to this day, I don't ever remember seeing an adult cry. But this day, this giant of a man began to cry. I didn't understand. I came a little closer to him. He did it with a 2nd child, and I saw him do it with a 3rd child, and he saw me from the corner of his eye. I've cleaned up pretty good now. But when I was 9, I had no potential at all. He put that baby down, and he came over to where I was. And this is how I think of Christmas. This giant of a man, he came down as low as he could, because I was 9 years old, and I just weighed a little over 30 pounds. And he looked into my eyes, and he stretched out his hand, and he touched me just like this. been over 50 years, but I can think of it just like it was right now. Heaven came down. I wanted so much to say, don't take your hand away. This is the right touch. But I didn't know how to respond because that emotion had died. So I did the thing that was natural for me. I yanked the hand off my face and I spit on him. Not nice. It came to about his shoelaces, you know. But can I ask you something? Because I've asked myself the same question. See, I have 6 children and 4 of them are adopted. But I've asked myself, what would I have done if one of my children that I was thinking about adopting had spit on me? What would I have done? They left. But guess what? They came back the next day. And they took me home with them. It took them 3 years to nurse me back to life, and they brought me to the United States of America. And I was given the name Stephanie Ann. I was given the country, the United States of America. And I was given a future with a hope. But it would not have happened if way back then, when that nurse had not rescued me and had taken a chance on me, and when I was in the orphanage, if it had not been for a woman in America that heard about this biracial little girl in South Korea that needed someone to believe in her and to sponsor her monthly. I have never met that woman. I don't even know her name. Because see, back then, you didn't get to correspond like you get to correspond if you sponsor a child tonight. But I stand here and I say, to God be the glory, great things He has done. Thank you for Christmas, and thank you for gifts. And I pray that this Christmas season, when you're thinking about all the gifts that you're going to wrap and give away, that you think about a child overseas that is waiting for you to say, will you be my hope, and will you be my Christmas story? Thank you so very much. Russell's going to come up and just share with you.
That's an amazing story. You only got to see just a glimpse of her miraculous, amazing rescue story. Now, let me tell you just briefly about Harry and Bertha Holt. In the 1950s, they were sitting in their living room, just a couple, just a regular couple, a working couple. He was home from work and he had eaten dinner, and he and Bertha, Harry and Bertha Holt, sat down in their living room. They were watching the evening news. And on the evening news, they saw a story about Korean war babies. They saw little babies whose lives had been devastated by the war. Little boys and little girls in the street, no clothes, sick and dirty, no mommy, no daddy. Sitting in the street crying as soldiers and as people walked by. And South Koreans didn't want to touch them, and the soldiers didn't know what to do. And there those babies abandoned, and it broke Harry and Bertha's heart. And Harry Holt, just a good Christian man from Eugene, Oregon, turned to his wife and said, honey, do you think we have room in our home for 1 or 2 of those little babies? And she said, Papa, I think we do. And so Harry Holt got on an airplane and he flew to South Korea. And Bertha Holt went to Congress, and together Harry and Bertha Holt opened the doorway in the United States of America for international adoption. Just a little couple who refused to do nothing. They opened the doorway so every beautiful little baby from around the world that you see running around the church, they're here because of the passion and conviction and dedication of Harry and Bertha Holt in the good hand of Jesus. And so Stephanie's one of those people. Harry and Bertha Holt not only brought a baby or 2 back, Harry and Bertha Holt brought 6 babies back. And their friends saw those babies and said, we want to get in on that. So Harry Holt chartered a plane and took a bunch of people back to South Korea. And on that plane, listen, on that plane was Bob Pierce, who later founded World Vision. And so all I'm telling you is that this couple decided to do something. They refused to do nothing. And it was their little bit that's changed the world. Now, Holt International, fast forward over 60 years, they've been rescuing babies. Tonight, while you and I are here, they're rescuing babies out of dumpsters and garbage cans and off of trash heaps. And they're loving these babies. I met a little boy named Michael whose face had been eaten off by a dog. And he was the sweetest little boy. And he hugged my neck and wanted me to hold him, and I didn't know what to do. And I held him, and he reached up and he touched my face, and I watched those ladies love on that little baby and treat him just like he looked like a brand spanking new, beautiful little newborn boy. And his life would have been in shambles, and he would have died, but Holt rescued him. And not only rescued him back to health, but got him medical attention. And because of that, he was saved, literally, physically saved. And a family in Iowa saw him and heard his story and said, we want him to be a part of our family. Now fast forward about 5 years, we're in Iowa on winter jam, and this good-looking little boy comes up to me. He's had 30 surgeries. They had to build him a nose. Here he is. He's got one good eye and a nose and a smile that won't quit. And his mom said every morning when he looks in the mirror, he says, looking good. She said he's a show-off and he loves to sing. And she said he loves to be on stage. He'll probably be up on stage like you guys one day. He wants to star in his own musical. And she said he rides the lawnmower around and he thinks he's a farmer. And she said he plays practical jokes on everybody, and he's changed my family's life forever. She said, so thank you to Holt International. Thank you to New Song for teaching us about what God is doing around the world through Holt. Now, here's what we're asking you to do tonight. We're not asking you to adopt a child unless the Lord tells you to do that. And then don't let anyone stop you. But what we're asking you to do tonight is stand in the gap with New Song and Stephanie and sponsor a child tonight. $30 a month will change a child's life forever. Between the time that Holt finds these babies and begins to love on them, and the time that they're adopted or placed in safe, secure, loving environments, during that period of time, we need someone to help us. We heard about Holt, and we went to India and to China and to Haiti. We went to some of their orphanages to watch the work that they're doing. It was extraordinary. And I met little Micah in Bangalore, India, by the way. Now he lives in Iowa. He's a farm boy. And between the time that they find them and help them, they need us. So we loved what they were doing. We said, hey, what can we do to help you? And we realized that they were great at helping orphans and horrible at promoting themselves because they were just too busy rescuing babies to go brag on themselves. So we said, let us do it. So together, New Song and a couple of our friends helped Holt International start a child sponsorship program. And here's what it is. You help one of these little babies, a little boy or a little girl, $30 a month, less than the price of a Pepsi a day or a Starbucks a week. Matter of fact, you cannot eat out one night a month. My wife and I, we sponsor, we're on our 9th baby. And my wife, I said, how can we sponsor one more? She said, well, I've got it figured out. She said, we're not going to eat out one night a month, and that will change a child's life forever. So one night a month, we have must go. Do you know what that is? It's all those Tupperware containers in your refrigerator that accumulate dinners. My wife lays it on the table and says, well, I'll say, what for dinner? Must go. And we know that that's Holt night. And we joyfully eat that whatever it is. We heat it up in the microwave and eat it knowing that we're changing a little girl in Eastern Europe's life forever. So I'm asking you to be a part of that. Listen, Christmas is all about buying and giving and getting. What if you could give a gift to a child that would change their life literally forever? My wife and I went crazy buying our kids gifts, and they spent more time playing with the boxes and wrestling over somebody else's present than enjoying their own most of the time when they were little. But we started sponsoring a kid one Christmas as part of our Christmas, and it's changed my children's lives forever. All 3 of them want to be in the ministry and work on the mission field. And I thought I was helping Holt. But Holt is helping me raise my children to love God and to love the least of these. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little intermission. In a minute, I'm going to pray for these babies. During intermission, you find one of our Holt volunteers to go out to the Holt table and get one of these picture folders. You fill this out and you give this to us. You take this home with you. In about 2 weeks, Holt will contact you and give you more information about your baby.